All right. Welcome and thank you everyone who has joined us this evening for an update and discussion on what's next for temporary protected status or TPS and the Ramos versus Mayorkas case. My name is Carolyn Tran and I represent Communities United for Status and Protection, CUSP for short, which is a national coalition of grassroots immigrant rights organizations organizing TPS holders from African, Asian, and Middle Eastern countries. Tonight's webinar is a partnership between CUSP and the TPS-DED Administrative Advocacy Coalition, which calls on the administration to broadly and boldly use blanket protections like TPS and deferred enforced departure to safeguard human life, to keep families united, to build a strong US economy and communities, and to promote a US foreign policy rooted in upholding human rights for all. Representing the TPS-DED Administrative Advocacy Coalition is Ramia Reddy. Between September 2017 and May 2018, the Trump administration terminated TPS for over 400,000 TPS holders from El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and Sudan, many of whom have been living lawfully in the US for decades. TPS holders and their US citizen children challenged these decisions, explaining the government did not follow the Administrative Procedure Act, acted out of racism in violation of the Constitution, and asked the court to stop the government from putting the illegal termination into effect. Soon we will hear from Emi MacLean, Senior Staff Attorney at the ACLU of Northern California, to give us an update on the recent court decision this past June and what it means for TPS as a means of protection and its impact on TPS holders. Following Emi's presentation, we will hear from advocates from African Communities Together, Adhikaar, Haitian Bridge Alliance, Alianza Americas, and the Nicaragua American Legal Defense and Education Fund. I want to thank all of our panelists tonight for sharing their knowledge and for their continued commitment in uplifting and protecting our communities. We all want the same thing: a safe place to call home, a chance to make a decent living, and a future for ourselves and our families. We need to protect our friends, loved ones, and neighbors from further environmental, economic, and emotional harm in their native countries. That means redesignating TPS to people from countries in the Ramos lawsuit, extending the re-registration period for Ramos beneficiaries, addressing the backlog in processing, and designating countries organizing for TPS. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on CUF's website in the next few days. We ask that you use the Q&A function to ask questions and wait until the end of the presentation to ask your questions by raising your hand. It is my pleasure now to introduce Emi MacLean.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Carolyn, and for folks being here and also just doing all the extraordinary work that this group and your respective organizations and members are doing out in the world and have been doing over the course of the challenges to TPS in recent years, but also, historically and into the future. As I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of some of the history of the Ramos litigation and where we are now as we think about what is a real important point of transition, where there's a need to make sure that everyone has good awareness of what is actually happening and strategic thinking about where to go from here. As Carolyn started describing in the introduction, the Trump administration endeavored to terminate TPS for over 400,000 people, which was 95% of the TPS holders at that time. This was an orchestrated effort to try to really end and undermine the TPS program as a whole and deprive hundreds of thousands of people of TPS status that they've relied on to support their families, to work, to live safely in the United States for years, in most cases for decades. This had never happened before in the history of the TPS program, which has been around for about 25 years at this point, or the TPS statute. And there had never been a legal challenge to a TPS termination at that time. And folks will definitely remember that it was a very scary time with a lot of anti-immigrant policy that was coming from the White House. Some things never change. They can be, worse or better at different points, but we've seen anti-immigrant policy for many, many years. 14 TPS holders and 7 of their US citizen children fought back in this concrete way in 2 lawsuits that challenged all 6 of these TPS terminations. The first lawsuit challenged the first 4 of the TPS terminations for Sudan, Sudan, El Salvador, Haiti, and Nicaragua. And the second lawsuit, Batarai, challenged the TPS terminations for Nepal and Honduras. The TPS holders who came to the fore and put their name and their stories on the line to be able to defend their right to remain in the United States and the rights of the hundreds of thousands of other TPS holders were Cristina Morales, Orlando Zepeda, Maria Jose Ayala Flores, Elsie Yolanda Flores de Ayala, Wilna Destin, Sharika Blank, Imada Ampie, Mazin Ahmed, Huwaida El Arabi, Keshav Batarai, Sajan Pandey, Sumnima Tapa, Donaldo Pasada, Zoraida Rodriguez Moutinho, and Denise Molina Chavez. And it's been really a great honor to represent them and also to work alongside the organizations that many of these TPS holders have been members of and that are, and many of you are connected to, and that has been central to the success of this litigation and just the ability of the litigation to proceed. The litigation was primarily challenging the terminations on 2 grounds. One was the illegal establishment of a new rule that was intended to terminate TPS in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act, which prevents amongst other things, the government from engaging in arbitrary and capricious behavior, including the establishment of a new rule without any disclosure of what that rule is. And most notably and demonstrably, making TPS decisions motivated by racism in violation of the Constitution. And over the course of the litigation, we uncovered clear and powerful evidence that the terminations were both motivated by racism and predetermined, with a rule that was established with the intention of terminating TPS for hundreds of thousands of people. Amongst the evidence that was uncovered as part of the lawsuit was the involvement of Trump and Trump surrogates, anti-immigrant stalwarts, in really actively working to end the TPS program and TPS protections for people, including, for instance, Stephen Miller frequently calling and advocating for the termination of TPS, the White House scheduling high-level meetings to pressure the DHS secretary to terminate, anti-immigrant actors brought in political positions and meant and acting to upend the work of career professionals. Two powerful specific examples are that Assistant Secretary Duke, or Deputy Secretary Duke, who was the acting secretary at the time of the TPS termination for Nicaragua. When she made her decision, she sent communications to the White House saying that her decisions were based on a, quote, America First view, and, quote, consistent with the president's position on immigration. The first TPS termination was the termination of TPS for Sudan. And on the night before the decision was made to terminate TPS for Sudan, the USCIS director read a draft memo that was so completely incoherent because the country conditions in Sudan were completely inconsistent with the recommendation to terminate, that he wrote in an email, the USCIS director, This memo reads, quote, like one person who strongly supports extending TPS for Sudan wrote everything up to the recommendation section, and then someone who opposes extension snuck up behind the first guy, clubbed him over the head, pushed his senseless body out of the way, and finished the memo. So they knew internally that what they were doing was completely inconsistent and predetermined, yet they modified, rather than recognizing this as a flaw and that the recommendation was completely inconsistent with the professional analysis of the country conditions, they changed the memo to, quote, more clearly support the decision to terminate. The decisions to terminate came first, the analysis followed. And so in October of 2018, based on all of the evidence, as well as, really incredible organizing and advocacy and people packing the courtroom and being present to make it clear how significant this issue was, how important TPS was for people, the plaintiffs won a preliminary injunction, form of emergency relief, that has, since that time, over the course of the last nearly 5 years, prevented the TPS terminations from going into effect. The court found that there was strong evidence that the terminations were unconstitutionally motivated by racism, and that they violated the law by not fully considering whether it was safe for TPS holders to return and incorporating this new rule that was predetermined to terminate TPS. As you all will know, the Trump administration, DOJ, appealed. And in September 2020, right before the last presidential election, a divided panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed 2-1. But that decision never became final and actually has since been vacated. The plaintiffs in that case asked for a en banc review from all of the Ninth Circuit. And once we engaged in settlement negotiations with the Biden administration for about 1.5 years, and when those were ultimately unsuccessful, the Ninth Circuit recognized that decision that was made was improper, vacated the Ninth Circuit decision, and set a court hearing for June 22nd of 2023. For the entirety of the Biden administration had said that they were intending to fix this problem, even actually before the Biden administration, when President Biden was a candidate for office, said that he was going to act to undo the illegal TPS terminations. As you all will know, there was a DHS redesignated or designated Haiti and Sudan for TPS prior to June 2023, but had not acted for the other 4 countries that were affected by the Trump TPS terminations: Honduras, El Salvador, Nepal, and Nicaragua. And then on the day before the en banc hearing, coincidentally, perhaps, the Biden administration, Department of Homeland Security, rescinded the TPS terminations for those 4 countries and extended TPS for those countries in this sort of weird structure that presumes that the TPS terminations never went into effect, and there were automatic 6-month extensions up until June 2023. And then issued new TPS extensions from the relevant date for each of those individual countries. This means that to qualify so first of all, important to know, the last Federal Register notice. So as a result of the injunction, which I think most people know, the result of the injunction from 2018 is that the Department of Homeland Security has had to auto extend TPS for at least 9-month intervals from that time. So that has been happening over the course of the last 5 years. It has sometimes been greater than a 9-month period, including with the last auto extension. The last auto extension was immediately after the settlement negotiations broke down. And in November of 2022, the Department of Homeland Security auto extended TPS for 18 months through June 30th of 2024, that is valid so long as the injunction is in place. No matter what, people will have protection through June 30th, 2024, whatever happens in the litigation. But it's extraordinarily important to know and to spread more broadly within the TPS holding communities that after June 30th, 2024, people need to be on one of these new new designations. So people need to either have registered for the Haitian or Sudanese TPS under the new designations, or to have re-registered for TPS under these June 21st, 2023 extensions that were introduced and that are in a Federal Register notice. We can put in the chat, I hope someone can put in the chat for everyone what the links are so that people have information about that re-registration. This is extraordinarily important because we are definitely concerned that everyone who has been benefiting from for the last 5 years from these auto extensions needs to know that we are moving out of a period of auto extensions, and they need to re-register for TPS either under, as they did prior to the Trump TPS terminations, either under these the Sudan and Haitian designations, new designations, or under these extensions from June 21st of 2023. And thanks for those who are putting that information in the chat. There's different dates at the current moment for the re-registration. We can put those in the chat as well, so folks have them. I'll just identify this so that people are aware of how this works. If you are not following this yet, we'll put the specific dates in the chat, but it's also relevant for thinking about advocacy moving forward as well. The El Salvador TPS designation, which affects the largest number of people, there's the largest number of Salvadoran TPS holders, is from September 10th. Sorry, the protection is from September 10th, 2023 through March 9th, 2025. But the registration period is for 60 days prior to that, which means now we are more than halfway through the Salvadoran re-registration period, which is July 12th, 2023 through September 10th, 2023. So currently, under the current DHS Federal Register notice, Salvadoran TPS holders to maintain TPS after June 30th, 2023 need to re-register for TPS before September 10th, 2023. Nepal Nepal, on the other hand, will have a 60-day registration period between October 24th, 2023 and December 23rd, 2023. So it's just important to note that we're moving back after these Federal Register notices, both the redesignations and these extensions, back to a pre-Trump termination period where people need to re-register as they had before for these protections over 18 month periods, and that the timelines for different countries' designations will again be separated out. So in addition to having auto extensions over the course of the last 5 years, there's also been a overlapping time period for protection for all of the TPS holders. So the auto extensions have applied to all 400,000 people from the 6 countries, and that is intended to shift back again to a period that is tied to the dates of the designations or the dates of the extensions. Importantly, the Biden administration has not acknowledged, from our perspective, has not acknowledged or repudiated the Trump administration's narrower approach to TPS decisions. They haven't identified that it was illegal to do what the Trump administration did, even as they've rescinded the TPS terminations for those 4 countries in June. We are concerned that this leaves TPS holders vulnerable to future terminations that could be implemented in the same way that the Trump administration did. without clear recognition that what the Trump administration did was illegal. The way that DHS terminated TPS for those 6 countries is illegal. The case is now back in the district court. The Ninth Circuit ultimately allowed the Department of Homeland Security to abandon their appeal, which means they have not appealed the injunction. The injunction stays in effect, and we go back to the Ninth Circuit, to the district court, Judge Chen. We actually are filing today an amended complaint that joins the 2 cases, Ramos and Bataray, and raises additional concerns, most notably around this re-registration timeline. The re-registration timelines are important to know, and we want people to register within that time period, but we're also really concerned that a lot of people won't re-register within those time periods because there's not a lot of public awareness about it. People understand that they have protection and will have protection through June 30th of 2024. And we want to make sure that the victories of this litigation don't result in people not knowing that they need to re-register. So flagging that, and can share that more broadly within the community once the amended complaint is filed. But I wanted to sort of close out this portion by saying that, you know, whatever happens from here and whatever the limitations are for TPS as a whole, and also for the protections that currently exist, it's really important to remember that Trump tried to terminate TPS for 95% of those who had it. And due to the strength and fight of TPS holders, the organizations that are marching alongside TPS holders and that TPS holders have organized to join and to fight with, not a single TPS holder lost their status through these terminations. And that's a really extraordinary victory. The Biden administration obviously must do more. Most importantly, right now, in our view, they must make sure that they extend the period for re-registration as long as possible, and at least through June 30th, 2024, to avoid TPS holders who have benefited from this injunction over the last 5 years losing their status because of the lack of awareness and the, we would say, you know, a sort of confusing way that the Biden administration has endeavored to transition from the period of the Trump terminations. And then, of course, we have to acknowledge and recognize that the existing system, for all the protections that it provides, is inadequate. More people should be able to have TPS. There needs to be more designations. The Biden administration easily could have and had the country conditions analysis to support the designation of TPS for all 4 of the countries that they extended TPS for, El Salvador, Honduras, Nepal, and Nicaragua. That is clear from the Federal Register notices. They chose not to. More countries, including those 4, need to be designated for TPS. And obviously, it is not lost, I'm sure, on this group that for those who have TPS, and especially have had TPS for long periods of time, TPS is inadequate, and the need to re-register every 18 months back into a re-registration stage should not exist, and people should have and deserve long-term relief. But that's what I have for an overview. I do want to say at this point in time that it's just really an honor to be representing the people that we represent, the TPS holders and their children in these cases over the course of the last 5 years, and to be working and fighting alongside all of you and so many others who've been, you know, leading the charge since the beginning of this.
Thank you so much, Emi. It is now my pleasure to introduce Yanira Arias, National Campaign Manager at Alianza Americas, whose mission is to create an inclusive, equitable, and sustainable way of life for migrant communities living in the United States and across the Americas. They are committed to empowering community leaders, government agencies, labor organizers, and faith-based communities to work transnationally to provide a more dignified and just way of life for all people living in the Americas. Yanira and her organization has been at the forefront of organizing and advocating for TPS for Central American countries. Tonight, Yanira will be covering the litigation impacts on TPS holders from El Salvador and Honduras.
Thank you, Carolyn, and I would like to start by extending a big appreciation to COS and to the TPS-DED AC for organizing this conversation, and of course to Emi and all the plaintiffs for the amazing support. I am a TPS holder myself as well from El Salvador, so I know what it's been for the past 5 years. What Amy described, it goes into different moments from desperation, uncertainty, but then to turning that into organizing and fighting back. I'm gonna, as Carolyn mentioned, I'm gonna cover quickly on what's going on, not only for TPS holders from El Salvador, but also from Honduras, what that means currently for the re-registration period, issues that we're seeing on the ground, but what we can do in addition to the issues to make sure that everyone who must re-register takes the opportunity to do so. I want to start by piggybacking on what Emi mentioned regarding auto extension and extension, because that's basically what we're hearing currently on a little bit of confusion. Auto extension as a result of the mandate from the court to the U.S. government to continue to provide the protection against deportation included until before July 12 for us to print a document from the USCIS website and to present that to anyone asking about our immigration status, about the validity of the employment authorization document, and as well of the length of that auto extension. That never happened. That happened only during the Trump administration, and because during the course of action of the Ramos litigation, and to make sure that we all continue to have the protection. So what was the process before? It was the extensions, just like Amy mentioned. And those extensions mean that we needed to send 2 different applications to continue to have the TPS protection and the validity of the employment authorization document. So right now, according to the HS, there are currently approximately 239,000 beneficiaries under El Salvador TPS designation who may be eligible to continue their TPS under the current extension announced on June 21st. And I highly encourage you to go to the chat and after the webinar, read the Federal Register for El Salvador, because it includes specific details related to the reasons why, according to the government of President Biden and Vice President Harris, decided to extend the relief for El Salvador. But also includes the necessary guidance for submitting your application, including the fees and the location where you need to mail if you are using the regular process of the USPS for mailing your applications of TPS and employment authorization documents, and as well as the instructions for submitting these in online. As per Honduras, as Amy mentioned, they also were granted 18 months extension, but at the moment, the only re-registration period open is for El Salvador, which started on July 12th and is ending in less than 3 weeks on Sunday, September 10th. Yes, on a Sunday. And so imagine if you need to mail an application on a Sunday. The 18-month extension will apply for currently approximately 76,000 beneficiaries under Honduras TPS designation who may be eligible to continue their TPS under the extension announced on June 21st. I want to make a clarification here. from those 239,000 Salvadorians and the 76,000 Hondurans. We still don't know the exact number of how many between 2018 and today, 2023, how many were able to adjust status through different avenues, such as family petition or any other existing immigration relief programs. But also how many of them had died or moved out of the US. So, but we continue to use those numbers to create awareness that is important to make sure that everyone re-register as indicated. For the case of Honduras, since the re-registration period hasn't started, it's important to mention that DHS clarifies that that every country must register during the 60-day re-registration period. For example, right now, Hondurans cannot do it. If they send it, their applications will not be processed, and they will need to submit that again. That means paying again. So that DHS will definitely not use that documentation when the re-registration period starts for Honduras on November 6th. So there are two applications that needs to be submitted. The I-765, that's the application for employment authorization, and it has a cost of $410. And the I-821 is the application for temporary protected status. So that's the application that USCIS will process and will determine if we will continue to be protected against deportation. That application has a cost of $50. The $410 and the $50 is for USCIS to process both applications. In addition, possibly USCIS may request that the person complies with sending biometrics. And that requires that USCIS will send you a letter or something to ask you to make an appointment and to pay an associated fee of $85. It's very important to understand that re-registering is important as soon as possible. Why? Because punctuality in the process allows you to pay attention to other issues in your family or your own needs. Also, starting the process on time, it is evidence that you have handy, and in case you need to show that you have an open case with USCIS. For instance, your boss asks you, a DMV, an immigration agent, the police, anyone who wants to know what's your immigration status or if you are a TPS holder. It's also important to comply timely with the process because you will avoid last-minute rushes, as I said at the beginning, that don't allow you to find an available appointment at any service organization. Remember, for El Salvador is ending on a Sunday. If you're planning to, after, let's say the organization is open on Sunday, but then you need to send that application via the USPS. And chances are that it's not going to be open on a Sunday. If you file it electronically, you don't have certainty if that organization will provide you with an appointment on a Sunday. Likely, organizations are going to set the last day, perhaps 2 days, 3 days before September 10, as per how many folks they can attend on a daily basis. Organizations sometimes are going to be short-handed with staff, so that's why they will be working on a schedule, how they can see you, and also the last day when they can receive TPS holders for filing applications. And there are consequences as well for not filing, for not registering on time. And those consequences, first of all, as a TPS holder myself for 22 years, that means if I don't re-register, I'm thrown into the garbage can 22 years. I might face deportation. I could face detention because my immigration status will be irregular, meaning I will not have any more permit to live in the US. Folks who don't comply with re-registration will no longer be able to use the employment authorization card for looking for new jobs or to continue to use it at your current to current job, and you will no longer be eligible to apply for the advanced parole, which is the travel document that allows you to visit your country of origin. That's not only for Salvadorians, that's Nicaraguans, Hondurans, and Nepalese. And since we're hearing and we're seeing several issues on the ground, confusion about if the TPS is auto-extended, not right now. DHS said we must submit these two applications in order to continue to have the TPS status and the validity of the work authorization document. So we are asking the DHS and USCIS to extend the re-registration period in order for organizations to work on a strong education campaign so that everyone understands what's going on, that we need to re-register, what are the documents that we need to send after 5 years of auto extensions. Perhaps folks have forgotten the process about what are the documents, the costs of the applications, that you may also need to provide additional documents like photocopy of your employment authorization document or social security card, and documents that prove your nationality. So all that maybe folks are not having organized right now, so they need time. So that's why also as organizations, we're asking DHS and USCIS to give us more time so that our campaigns include that kind of education, and as well to work in collaboration with other local service providers, including for the case of El Salvador, which has a long history of the consulates of El Salvador engaging in providing free services for re-registering TPS holders for El Salvador. We need to communicate in order to know how many people they have registered, and if we are meeting the numbers, to make sure that everyone registers. So we are, as we speak, with the collaboration of folks like here in the call, we are organizing an educational campaign so that everyone registering from El Salvador, talking to the media outlets to discuss what's happening so that we make the issue visible so folks can see it in the TV, on the radio, so can hear what's going on. We contacted this week DHS and USCIS, formally requested extending the re-registration period with more time beyond September 9, September 10. But that request is not only for El Salvador. We are asking that for Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. We are as well mobilizing the support of members of Congress so that they can help us elevate this goal to DHS and USCIS. As I said, we're talking to consular staff and embassies. Yesterday, we met with the ambassador of Honduras to tell them what we're seeing and for El Salvador, and for them to prepare, strategize, and organize, but most of all, collaborate with grassroots organizations on solutions to prevent the same issues with TPS holders from Honduras. The last thing I would like to highlight on this component is that these education and organizing strategies are not only for community-based organizations. Members of the community, impacted communities, can be as well of these advocacy and communication strategies. When it comes to redesignations, as Amy mentioned, the administration fell short into. We've been calling the administration literally the same month that happens the impacts of Hurricanes Eta and Iota. We sent a letter to then presidential candidate Biden and to then President Trump, asking them for their leadership and to make sure that they protect Central Americans from El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guatemala with deep roots and prevent their deportation. And then next year, actually on July 21st, 2022, we sent the first letter. 209 organizations signed that letter. And August 5th, another national letter was sent. And from there, so many letters have been sent by organizations, members of Congress, and we will continue to educate about the root causes of migration in the need of protections for TPS holders. And I thank you for your time. I'll give you back the mic, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Yanira. I would now like to introduce Harold Rocha from the Nicaragua American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and former president of the Nicaraguan American Center for Democracy. Harold and his organization has been leading the advocacy for Nicaraguan TPS holders in the United States and advocating for political prisoners in Nicaragua. Based on the devastation caused by Hurricane Mitch, Nicaragua was initially designated for TPS in 1999, but has experienced subsequent environmental disasters that have substantially disrupted living conditions in Nicaragua and have led to extensions of TPS, but not redesignation in the recent litigation.
Thank you so very much, Caroline, and thank you so very much to CUSP and to all the co-sponsors for this spectacular program. I think it's extremely helpful, and it gives us an opportunity to give some good, up-to-date, current information on what we can expect on the Ramos litigation, but beyond that, also on all the efforts that are going on to obtain redesignation for some of the, not only the Ramos countries, but others as well. I would also like to thank Attorney MacLean from the ACLU for the spectacular presentation that she gave us, a spectacular overview, extremely helpful. And she, I hope, will thank her colleagues at the ACLU of Northern California for all their efforts and work on this very worthwhile issue. Nicaragua, indeed, just like the other countries that are subject to the Ramos litigation, was subject to the automatic extension of TPS through June 30th of 2024. So those TPS holders, which we estimate to be, and DHS estimates as well to be around 4,200, will have to do absolutely nothing if they just wish to remain protected through June 30th of 2024. However, the Federal Register notice that was published just before the en banc hearing of the Ninth Circuit states that Nicaragua has also been subject to an extension, a new extension, and that those that are that currently hold TPS from Nicaragua that are nationals need to re-register. And that re-registration period is begins on November 6, 2023, just in about 10 weeks, and it will be valid for about 60 days until about January 5th of 2024. So it's very important for those 4,200 Nicaraguan TPS holders that hold TPS from the 1999 designation that was announced then, so right after Hurricane Mitch, need to make sure that they file the immigration form I-821 before January 5th, 2024. That's the only way to preserve their TPS status and protection and employment authorization through 2025. Now, subject to that, we are currently working on a new designation for Nicaraguans that have arrived since since 1999. And that effort is ongoing on two fronts. One is along with the countries of El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and a new designation for Guatemala, arguing that indeed the Northern Triangle countries of Central America plus Nicaragua share some of the very same country conditions that merit a new designation of TPS. And in the case of Guatemala, it would be a first designation as Guatemala has never held TPS before. Those efforts are ongoing, and we hope that they will be fruitful. However, we are also cognizant of the fact that these are very difficult political times, and at times that might not be electorally possible, given all the considerations that political parties take into account when they designate these things. Nevertheless, we feel that Nicaragua in particular not only shares some of the same country conditions with the other Central American countries, but also shares specific country conditions that are unique to Nicaragua and that are similar to conditions in Venezuela and Cuba. Cuba is not subject right now to absolutely any TPS campaign, but Venezuela is. And we feel that somehow we share some of the very same issues, and that as a result, if there is a consideration in the Venezuelan campaign for a new designation of TPS, the same should hold for Nicaragua. So that being said, the Nicaraguan campaign is working not only with the other 3 Central American countries of the Northern Triangle, but also with Venezuela as a bilateral as well, and also with other countries, because we feel very, very strongly that Nicaraguans should be protected just like anybody else that needs protection, temporary protection in the United States. We feel that we strongly meet the statutory requirements. There is a temporary reason why Nicaraguans that are currently in the United States cannot return safely to Nicaragua, and that they need temporary protection, not only because of the political circumstances, but also because many of them are subject or are or are facing consequences from the hurricanes Iota and Alta from a couple of years ago. And it may be that American taxpayers don't realize that many of those countries just don't have the infrastructure that allows them to recover from natural disasters quickly. We don't have a FEMA that can really step in and really take over. And in addition to that, we are also documenting now migration that is the direct result of environmental reasons as well, which are not natural disasters per se as the statute requires, but are in a way very much related to that. And so we are hoping that that campaign will be full, that it will be successful, and that it will not be successful not only for Nicaraguans, but for all citizens of the world that need temporary protections in the United States. And that is a commitment that we know the United States has, and it's just a matter of reminding our elected officials of that fact, and that is something that we need to have to do. Now, how can we get engaged? There are many ways. There are several campaigns that are asking the Biden administration directly. There are emails that can be sent. There are phone calls that can be made from Tuesday through Thursdays every week to the public comment line, asking the administration for a new designation. There are letters that can be written. Or organizations that are working actively on this, we are also working very actively to make sure that we forward additional comments on this. So anyway, the campaign is ongoing. We feel very confident about it, and we only feel confident about it because of all the support that we have from all the other organizations. So it is a group effort, and for that, I thank them once again very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harold. We are running a little behind, so we ask that you just stay on an extra 10 minutes so that all of our panelists have time to share information. Our next speaker is Charlotte Weiner from the Haitian Bridge Alliance to speak about TPS for Haitian beneficiaries. HBA advocates for fair and humane immigration policies and provides migrants and immigrants with humanitarian, legal, and social services with a particular focus on Black people, the Haitian community, women and girls, LGBTQIA+ individuals, and survivors of torture and other human rights abuses.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks. Oops, am I unmuted? Yeah, okay. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'll try to be quick because I know that we're running out of time. So I wanted to just speak a little about Haiti's designations of TPS. So the first designation was in 2011, and that was due to the major earthquake in 2010 in Haiti. So this is the designation that is covered by the Ramos injunction. It's also covered by another injunction from Sage versus Trump, and I'll speak to that a little later. I just want to go through the different TPS designations first. So after the recovery, there was some recovery from the earthquake, but unfortunately not as much as we had hoped. And with the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, Haiti really began a downward spiral. Haitian Bridge Alliance and along with our partners, we did a lot of work pleading Haiti's case to the administration. And that got us Haiti redesignated on August 3rd, 2021. So that was the second designation. Unfortunately, this designation proved to be bittersweet because of the extremely long processing times. For example, in January 2023, I remember checking the processing times and it was 12.5 months. And so this meant that we had a majority of those who had applied under the second designation who did not even receive an approval of their TPS before the 18 months were up. There was a small group who did receive an approval before that time and were able to benefit from TPS for very little time before the 18 months were up. And so again, we found ourselves, along with our partners, calling on the government to not only extend TPS for all those who had not benefited for it at all, or who had only benefited from it for a short time and theirs was about to expire. And so we did that, but we also decided to push for redesignation of Haiti a third time, given the extraordinariness of the crises that had only increased. And so fortunately, we were able to get both the extension of the second TPS designation and a third designation. And so for the extension of the 2021 designation, those who had received an approval of their TPS before the end of the 2021 designation, which would be in 2023, they were required to, like many have before, do this re-registration. And this was during a 60-day period, which was at the beginning of the year. It was January 26, 2023 through March 27th, 2023. Also, given that nobody had received a new EAD, DHS had automatically extended the validity of the EADs that had previously been issued under the 2021 designation of TPS for Haiti. And this was through February 3rd, 2024. And then for many of those who had never received a response at the end of the 18 months, when they did receive a response, it was valid through August 3rd, 2024. So that's for the second designation. In regards to the third redesignation, this allowed those Haitian nationals who had entered before November 6, 2022 to apply. And this designation is open for registration through August 3rd, 2024. Unfortunately, this designation, like the prior designation, is proving to be even more bittersweet because now, according to the CIS case processing website, it takes 18 months for 80% of the cases that the California Service Center is processing to be processed. So as long as if you had applied at the very beginning, you will not have it at the very end. You're more than likely not to have it at the very end. And so that's for the three different designations. In regards to how this all plays into the Ramos injunction. So there's the Ninth Circuit Court in Ramos that prevents DHS from terminating TPS designations, as we all know, for these different countries, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Sudan, and Haiti. But there's a separate injunction in Sage versus Trump in the Second Circuit. So it was a case in New York. And that also continues to bar the agency from terminating Haiti's TPS designation, the first designation. And this was, we had brought this case based on the extreme racial animus in the case of Haiti. And so right now, for the time being, the government's appeal on the Sajid injunction is pending before the Second Circuit. And so that said, even though there are these two injunctions, I will, as the others have, recommend that those who had filed for TPS under the 2011 designation register again, just in case both injunctions fall through. I know that we have a lot of Haitians who already have re-registered with the second one. If they have not registered with the second one, there's still a chance to register under the third TPS designation. And I think that's all for now. I'll let Carolyn keep us going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Our next panelist is Diana Konate from African Communities Together, an organization of African immigrants fighting for civil rights, opportunity, and a better life for their families here in the US and worldwide. ACT empowers African immigrants to integrate socially, advance economically, and engage civically. They connect African immigrants to critical services, help Africans develop as leaders, and organize their communities on the issues that matter. Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being on the webinar and for having me here. So just to quickly touch on Sudan, ACT has been working to keep Sudanese TPS holders protected since the Trump administration canceled or terminated their TPS protection. We were pleased when the administration, the Biden administration, designated TPS for Sudan early last year, in April of last year, because it allowed not only the 700 TPS holders from Sudan who had been protected by the courts to get a DHS a protection through an actual DHS designation, but it also made close to 2,400 newly eligible folks from Sudan, made them eligible for TPS. So we were very happy about that. We did a lot of outreach to our members to ensure that they applied for TPS through the DHS designation. We are concerned that many may not have. When the numbers came out recently with the new designation, of the over 3,000 Sudanese who were likely to have been eligible for TPS under the last designation, it appears that only 1,200 availed themselves of TPS protection. So really concerned that folks, particularly folks who had been protected through Ramos, who are used to the auto extensions, are not aware that, with this TPS designation, that it does not automatically extend it for them, that they actually do need to apply. So that's where a lot of our advocacy is going. We were very excited that last week, Friday, TPS was once again extended for Sudan, as well as redesignated. An additional 2,700 Sudanese are likely to be eligible under this new redesignation. So, doing a lot of outreach into the community, trying to make sure that not only do the folks under Ramos, ensuring that they are applying for protection through these designations, but that the eligible Sudanese community is as well. And I will stop there since we are over time, and pass it back to Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Diana. And I also forgot to mention that Diana is the policy manager at ACT. So our final panelist this evening is Prathana Guru, Director of Campaigns and Communications for Adhikaar, a women-led community and workers center that provides direct services to the Nepali-speaking community and organizes low-income workers and impacted community members to promote social justice and human rights. They create access to information, build community leadership, and grow collective power to win rights for their communities and dignity and equity for all.
Thanks, Carolyn. And hi, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for sticking through. And I'll just briefly go over updates on Nepal TPS and a brief overview for those of you who are new to it. So as Emi mentioned earlier and other folks have mentioned, Nepal is part of the Ramos countries, the lawsuit, and it is actually the only protection currently, similar to some of the other countries here presented today, that is protected under just the lawsuit. Essentially, there's no redesignation or active protection through redesignation currently, right? And so just really quickly about the original designation, Nepal received TPS in 2015 as part of a massive earthquake. It was a 7.8 earthquake that happened in Nepal. Over 8 million people were affected and tens of thousands others as well. And obviously the country is still recovering from the impacts of that. And because of that, and through the advocacy and the campaigning to win TPS, our estimates and through USCIS estimates are anywhere between 8,000 TPS holders, Nepali TPS holders around the country, and even upwards of potentially 15,000 who are actually eligible, but perhaps were not able to get TPS, right? And as Emi mentioned earlier, in 2018, our members, Sajjan Pandey and Keshav Patrai, joined the lawsuit as Nepal was one of the countries that was terminated by Trump during the administration. So as some of you have heard so far, and I think there's a few of our members and Nepali TPS holders on this call, on the Zoom, existing TPS holders do have to re-register, right? As everyone is saying, it's not, we got used to the auto renewals, and now what it is that you actually have to re-register if you are a TPS holder and you want that to continue. And so for Nepal, the re-registration date is from October 24th this year, 2023, so October 24th until December 23rd, 2023, so 60-day period. And so essentially this protection, once people re-register, will protect them until June 24th, 2025, right? We really encourage everyone to be ready for that. Adhikaar, through our Facebook page, we will be posting a ton of community education information in Nepali and English in video form, graphics and checklists and all of that, for people to understand what paperwork you need to get ready, what fees you need to get ready for, right? How you can re-register. Adhikaar is going to be holding clinics, legal clinics in New York, and we are working on potentially doing referrals in other states, but for sure we're doing clinics in New York. And even if you live in other states, you should definitely call us, and I'll make sure to drop our phone number in the chat after this. With redesignation, I just want to make sure that people also understand we have an active campaign for redesignation. So people who came after 2015, we're also pushing for them to also be covered by TPS, right? This is not something that in its existence yet. We are pushing for it. And essentially, we've been engaging with DHS and USCIS as well as members of Congress to push for redesignation, which essentially would mean that we could protect more Nepalis, nationals who are here in the US, especially those who came after 2015, right, and up until currently, right? So we've been pushing that advocacy as well. And if there are advocates in certain states where we know that there's a huge population of Nepalis, for example, in Texas, in California, and Massachusetts, Virginia, Minnesota, we're looking for folks who are in Arkansas and Louisiana, then definitely let us know and call us and contact us via our social media and Facebook, because we can definitely get you all engaged as well in our campaign, and we can make sure that you get the information that you need if you're a TPS holder right now and you need to re-register, or if you're not a TPS holder, but you came after 2015 or you're interested in finding out more about the redesignation campaign. The last thing I'll say before I hop off, because I know we're over time, is that I just want to also highlight the importance for advocates on here, TPS holders on here, that telling stories has been really, really successful for ourselves. And I'm sure other advocates and organizations and panelists understand that, we wouldn't be able to win all of these things that we have right now, whether it's TPS or the fact that we're pushing for a longer re-registration period, we're pushing for redesignation, TPS holders being able to openly say, I'm a TPS holder and we need this, right? We need extended protections. Even the plaintiffs who were brave enough to come during the Trump administration to say, we want to file this lawsuit. Overall, storytelling has been so powerful and really an effective strategy to really push any TPS campaign, regardless of what country it is. So if you are thinking either you're engaged in a TPS campaign right now, maybe you have clients or members from TPS countries, or maybe you serve a population that doesn't have TPS yet, I really encourage you all to look into how to really build strong storytellers, TPS holders that are storytellers, advocates that are really good storytellers and can be spokespeople for your campaign. So I'll leave it there, and I'll also drop our contact information for Adhikaar. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pratana, and to all of our panelists tonight, and to everybody who tuned in to learn and also take back ideas to organize within your communities. We apologize that we didn't get to Q&A, but we did drop folks' emails. So if you want to email them directly with your questions, please feel free. And we will follow up with additional information. This webinar will be posted on CUS's website, which is wearecus.org, and we hope that everybody has a good evening. Thank you.